felt the bone snap before my mind understood the pain, and the sound that followed was something I will never forget. A short, sharp crack that silenced the entire world around me, as if even the walls were shocked by what my stepdad had just done. My right leg folded beneath me at an angle no human limb should ever bend, and I collapsed onto the cold marble floor, clawing at the tiles while my vision blurred. Gregory Hale stood over me breathing hard, his face flushed with the kind of rage that does not burn hot, but cold, a controlled fury that makes a man capable of anything. His voice came low near my ear like a blade dragged across ice. "You should have stayed in your place, Lydia." I tasted blood in my mouth, but the humiliation cut deeper. Vanessa Creed. His mistress stepped around my body as if I were trash on her designer floor, her heels clicking with delighted rhythm. She smirked as she knelt beside me, hair perfectly curled, perfume heavy enough to choke. "You should be thanking me, dear," she whispered before leaning closer. "He only hit you because he still cares." I slapped her once, barely a touch compared to what she deserved, but Gregory reacted as if I had committed an unforgivable sin. His hand wrapped around my arm, his fist lifted my body, and he threw me down with enough force to break me. Vanessa giggled when he kicked my phone away the same way someone laughs at a dog performing a trick. I tried dragging myself backward, fingers slipping on the polished floor, but Gregory grabbed a fistful of my hair, hauled me up and hissed, "Do you want to end up like the last girl who crossed me?" My heart stopped for a moment because I knew he was not using a metaphor. And then he dragged me down the basement stairs, every bump, sending a fresh wave of agony through my broken leg. He shoved me inside and slammed the metal door, the lock clicking with finality. The air was freezing, the room dead silent, except for my shallow, uneven breaths. I crawled toward the single object that had slid down with me, my phone, the screen cracked but still glowing. 1% battery. I pressed the call button for the only contact I had saved under "Never call unless dying mom." The phone rang once, twice, and then her voice, calm, steady, almost frighteningly controlled, said, "Lydia, what happened?" And in that moment, drowning in pain and terror, something fierce rose inside me. I whispered, "Mom, leave no survivors in that house." The morning sunlight spilling across Chicago could not warm the unease growing in my chest as the train curved toward the Marston Ridge exit, a place I had not returned to in almost 8 months. I stared at my reflection in the window, the faint bruise on my arm still visible from an accident I had clumsily explained away to friends, though deep down I already knew the truth. Gregory Hale had always been crossing boundaries, each visit a little closer, each comment a little sharper, each look a little colder. That was why I left for school. That was why Mom sounded different every time we talked on the phone. Softer, quieter, like someone holding her breath for months at a time. When the train stopped, I stepped out, pulling my coat tighter against the wind. The Hale mansion rose on the hill like something built to intimidate glass and stone, pressed together without warmth or memory. I swallowed hard and walked toward the iron gate that opened before I even touched it, the security system sensing a returning resident, not a welcomed one. Gregory had installed that last year without asking Mom. He said it was for safety, but I never believed men like him cared about safety unless it was their own. The front doors opened, and there she was, Helen Marston, my mother, the woman who once hummed while cooking and told stories while brushing my hair. But now her smile trembled, her eyes darted down the hall before she pulled me into a hug. "Lydia, honey, you should have called sooner," she whispered, but her arms were tight as if she needed to verify that I was real, that I was whole. Her voice cracked not from joy, but from exhaustion, the kind of exhaustion that grows in houses where you must measure every movement, every breath. We walked through the foyer, the silence thick enough to hold weight. Gregory liked it that way. No music, no laughter, just control. "You look pale, Mom," I said, gently tugging her sleeve. She forced a smile. "I have been busy with the house and with Gregory's new project. He needs so much help." I stopped walking. Each word sank into me. "He needs so much help. People do not speak that way unless they are afraid, unless they have learned to adapt in order to survive. Gregory appeared at the top of the staircase like a judge emerging from shadows. His tailored suit fit too perfectly, his expression carved from stone. "Lydia," he said with a professional smile that never reached his eyes, "you finally remembered your mother exists." I stiffened at the jab, but Mom stepped forward, smoothing her blouse like someone trying to prevent an explosion. "Yes," she said, "Lydia is here to visit. She just arrived." Gregory's gaze lingered on me too long, slow enough to feel like a hand sliding across my skin. I felt the same old instinct rising, the one that told me to step back, give distance, create space. But he descended the stairs anyway, invading the air around me with the scent of expensive cologne and entitlement. He grabbed my chin, lightly examining my face as if critiquing a flawed sculpture. "You look tired, Lydia." "School not going well?" His thumb brushed my cheek in a gesture that pretended to be fatherly, but carried something colder, something proprietary. I pulled away. Gregory's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second before he laughed a sound with no mirth, only edge. Mom flinched just a little, not enough for him to notice, but enough for me to feel the truth. My mother was afraid of the man she married, afraid enough to hide it, afraid enough to pretend everything was fine. I followed her into the kitchen where sunlight could not soften the tension. She dropped a glass while reaching for a cup and whispered sorry before anyone could speak, as if bracing for punishment. "Lydia?" "Something is wrong," I murmured. Mom froze, then forced another smile. "Nothing is wrong, just, please do not provoke him today. He is under pressure with the new investor arriving this afternoon." Pressure did not explain the bruise hidden under her sleeve. Pressure did not explain why she never called me from her bedroom anymore. Pressure did not explain why the house felt like it was holding its breath. 24 hours before my leg snapped, 24 hours before the basement, 24 hours before I whispered, "Leave no survivors," I already knew the truth. Something in this house was rotting, and I was about to find out how deep the decay went. The atmosphere inside the Hale mansion tightened as the afternoon settled in thick and humid, like the air before a thunderstorm. Mom moved through the kitchen like a ghost stirring a pot she never tasted, wiping counters already clean, glancing toward the hallway every few seconds as if listening for incoming footsteps. I sat at the island watching every tremor in her hands, every forced inhale, every small apology spilling out of her, even when no one spoke. That was when I realized something Mom had stopped existing as herself. She had become a shadow orbiting Gregory's moods. Around 4, I heard muffled voices upstairs, a woman's laugh sharp and flirtatious, threading down the staircase like a needle-piercing fabric. Mom froze. The wooden spoon clattered to the floor. I looked at her face, then at the ceiling, then back at her. She shook her head slightly, pleading silently. "Don't!" But the laugh came again, louder this time, followed by Gregory's low voice, the tone men use when they think they are gods in their own kingdom. I stood up. Mom grabbed my wrist. "Lydia, please do not go up there." Her voice trembled, but something else flickered beneath the fear-shame. Shame so deep it hollowed her out. That was why I had to go. I slipped out of her grasp and walked toward the stairs, each step steady, cold, deliberate. The closer I got, the more the truth crystallized into something solid, something ugly. At the top of the landing, the bedroom door was cracked open and a string of soft giggles spilled out. I heard Gregory whisper, "You look better in that than she ever did." My stomach twisted. No, not again. Not like this. I pushed the door open, and time stopped. A woman in a red silk slip lounged against the pillows, her hair cascading over her shoulders in loose curls. Serena Vale, Mom's coworker at the event planning firm, Mom's friend. Gregory was standing beside the bed shirt unbuttoned, his hand sliding along Serena's thigh like he owned the world and everything in it. The moment he saw me, his face flickered with annoyance, not guilt. "Lydia," he said flatly, as if I had interrupted him during paperwork. "You should knock." Serena smirked, touching his arm like she belonged there. I felt something inside me snap. Not anger, not sorrow. Something sharper. A truth finally given permission to breathe. "You're disgusting," I said, my voice low but steady. Gregory raised a brow as if amused by my audacity. "Lena." You have no idea what adults do when— Do not say my name, I snapped. Do not pretend you are anything but a parasite draining my mother dry. Serena rolled her eyes. Please, she murmured. Gregory, she is dramatic. The sound she made, that careless flick of disrespect, lit something electric inside me. I stepped forward, grabbed her wrist, and yanked her off the bed. She stumbled, hitting the floor with a sharp cry. Get out! I hissed. Serena scrambled backward, rubbing her wrist. Gregory's eyes darkened. Not at her, not at me. At the fact I had broken his illusion of control. He walked toward me, slow, intentional, the way predators stalk prey. You think you get to tell me what to do in my house? He said, his voice now cold iron. Your house. I laughed once, a hollow sound echoing off the walls. You mean the house Mom pays for with her inheritance before you drained half of it for your business scams? I saw the flicker. Something like panic, quickly buried under arrogance. He stepped closer until his breath touched my cheek. You have 5 seconds to apologize for touching her. I did not move. 1. His jaw flexed. 2. His hand curled into a fist. 3. I didn't blink. 4. Lydia Helen's voice screamed from downstairs. 5. Gregory shoved me hard toward the dresser. I caught my balance, but my shoulder burned. He pointed at me, his voice a growl. Get out before I teach you the same lesson I taught your mother. The words slammed through me like a shockwave. The same lesson. I stared at him, the pieces falling together so violently I felt sick. Gregory had hurt her, not once, not by accident, but as a pattern. Mom's trembling hands, her sudden apologies, her silence. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off him, then turned and walked down the hall, hearing Serena's voice again behind me. Low, smug, poisonous. But all I could focus on was the truth ringing through my skull. My mother was living with a monster, and the monster had just looked me in the eyes and threatened to break me, too. The evening air inside the Hale mansion felt heavier than usual, as if even the walls sensed that something poisonous was slithering beneath the surface. Mom kept hovering near me, touching my shoulder, checking my leg, checking my face, checking anything she could reach, like she expected bruises to form out of thin air. I couldn't tell her about Serena. Not yet. Not until I understood just how deep Gregory's rot went. Just after 7, we heard the sound of the front door unlocking. Gregory walked in, wearing the fake, polished confidence he reserved for neighbors and co-workers. Serena wasn't with him, but the scent of her floral perfume clung to his shirt like a confession. Mom straightened instantly, shoulders pulled back, hands clasped as if bracing for impact. Dinner's ready, she said, giving him a nervous smile that didn't disguise the tremor in her hands. Gregory didn't answer. He tossed his briefcase onto the couch with a heavy thud and walked past her like she was invisible. I stepped beside Mom. She didn't speak, but her eyes pleaded with me, don't start. But sometimes confrontation isn't a choice. Sometimes it is a survival instinct. When we sat down at the table, Gregory took the head seat. Mom placed a plate of roasted chicken in front of him, but before she could step back, he grabbed her wrist. The room froze. He lifted her sleeve, revealing faint bruises that had already turned yellow and purple. He studied them with a cold, assessing gaze. Why were you at the office today? He asked quietly. Too quietly. Mom swallowed nervously. I had paperwork to file for the event next week. Gregory lifted his eyes to hers, and what I saw in his expression made my stomach drop. He didn't believe her. He didn't need to. He didn't care. He tightened his grip. Mom winced. Something inside me snapped like an overstretched wire. Let her go, I said. Gregory didn't look at me. He kept his gaze on Mom as if I were the sound of a fly buzzing in the background. Lydia, go to your room, he said. I stood up. Let her go! Gregory slowly released her wrist and leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. You think you're brave, he said, but his voice had that dangerous calm again, the one he used right before he hurt someone. Mom tried to step between us, but he held up his hand and she stopped like someone had pressed pause on her body. Lydia, he said you really want to pretend you're the moral one in this house. Should we talk about how you slapped Serena today? Mom gasped, her hand covering her mouth. "Serena Vale," she whispered. Gregory's lips curled into a smirk. "Yes, your daughter thought it was appropriate to assault one of your best friends." Mom turned to me, her face, pale eyes wide with disbelief. "Lydia, please tell me he's lying." I wanted to tell her the truth about Serena, the affair, the betrayal, all of it, but this was not the moment. Not when Gregory controlled the narrative, not when Mom was already breaking. "I'll tell you later," I whispered. Gregory scoffed. "Of course you will." He stood abruptly, making the chair screech against the floor. "You think you're strong enough to stand against me, you little brat?" Mom stepped forward, her voice fragile but firm. "Gregory, stop!" She reached for him, but he shoved her aside with one hand. Hard. She hit the corner of the table and stumbled to the floor, a soft cry escaping her lips. I ran to her side, fury flooding my veins so violently I felt dizzy. Gregory approached us, steps slow, deliberate, amused. That's when the knock came. 3 sharp raps at the front door. Gregory stiffened. None of us moved. Then a familiar voice drifted in muffled through the wood. "Mr. Hale, this is Officer Pearson. We received a call about a disturbance." Mom's eyes snapped to mine, fear surging through her like a tidal wave. "Lydia, you didn't," she whispered. "But I had." I stared at Gregory and watched something primal flicker through his eyes. He grabbed my arm so suddenly I didn't have time to react. He yanked me upward hard enough to make my ankle twist beneath me, and pain shot through my leg like lightning. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," he hissed. The knock came again, louder this time. Gregory's grip tightened, Mom screamed, and I realized with chilling clarity Gregory wasn't going to stop at slapping or pushing this time. Tonight he was going to break something else. Maybe me, maybe her, maybe both. And that was the moment, the exact second my hatred crystallized into something razor-sharp and unshakable. Tonight was the breaking point. Tonight was the start of his destruction. Officer Pearson knocked a third time louder, more insistent, and for a brief moment the sound felt like salvation pounding against the door. But Gregory's grip on my arm tightened until my fingers went numb. He dragged me back from the foyer with terrifying strength, his breath hot and furious against my ear. "You brought cops into my house," he hissed, spittle hitting my cheek. Mom scrambled up from the floor, reaching for me. "Lydia?" "No, please." Gregory shoved her backward so violently she hit the wall with a dull thud. Officer Pearson called again. "Mr. Hale, if you do not open the door, we will proceed." Gregory froze just for a second. I saw the calculation flicker across his face. He couldn't let police inside, not with his Mistress furniture still in the bedroom, not with Mom's bruises, not with the financial documents I'd seen him hiding under the floorboard in his office. So he switched masks. Instantly. His face rearranged into a calm, wounded homeowner expression. He released my arm, slowly smoothed his shirt, and walked toward the entryway like a man who had everything under control. Before he unlocked the door, he turned his head slightly and mouthed one word to me. "Stay." The threat behind it was unmistakable. Mom shook her head violently at me, silently begging me not to provoke him again. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The door opened. Officer Pearson stood outside, concern etched across his face. "Evening, sir. We got a call from this address. Some neighbors reported yelling." Gregory let out a soft, practiced laugh. Yes, sorry about that." My wife startled herself when she dropped a pan. Loud noise, lots of commotion. Pearson looked over Gregory's shoulder and saw Mom standing rigid by the kitchen doorway, her smile too tight, too rehearsed. "Everything all right, ma'am?" Mom nodded too fast. "Yes, officer. Everything's fine. We're fine." He hesitated. His eyes shifted to me. I tried to speak, but Gregory stepped slightly sideways, blocking his view with deliberate ease. "Thank you for checking, sir," Gregory said calmly. Officer Pearson studied him for a moment, then reluctantly stepped back. "If you need anything, call. Have a safe night." Gregory closed the door quietly, too quietly. The silence after that felt like a blade pressed against my throat. He turned toward us. The mask dropped. "Get to the basement!" His voice was low, trembling with rage he could barely contain. Mom and I both froze. What? I started. He moved faster than I expected. He grabbed my wrist again and yanked me toward the basement door. Mom ran after him. Gregory, stop! Please, don't! I'll do anything! She clung to his arm, but he turned and shoved her down so hard she skidded on the wooden floor, slamming her palm against the wall to stop herself from falling. He opened the basement door, the smell of damp concrete drifting out like a warning. You want to call cops on me? He snarled. You want to play hero? Go ahead, play. He shoved me down the first step. My injured ankle buckled and I stumbled, catching myself on the railing just before collapsing completely. Gregory stepped behind me and whispered voice-dripping venom. You're not leaving that basement until you learn some respect. I heard Mom scream my name, heard her begging, heard something break. Then the heavy steel door slammed shut, and the lock clicked. The basement was freezing, my breath fogged in the air. My ankle throbbed, swelling rapidly beneath my skin. The concrete floor bit into my palms as I crawled to the far corner, trying to put distance between myself and the door, even though it didn't matter it was locked. My vision blurred. My leg pulsed with hot, nauseating pain. But what hurt worse was the realization I had seen in Gregory's eyes before the door closed. He wasn't planning to keep me down here for an hour or even a night. He wanted to break me slowly, quietly, permanently. I brought my knees to my chest, forcing myself to breathe. And there, in the cold silence, the truth settled like ash in my lungs. My stepdad was not a bully. He was not a bad temper. He was not a flawed man. He was a predator, and predators don't stop, not until something stops them first. I wiped my face with trembling fingers and whispered into the darkness. Mom, please don't let him hurt you too. But deep inside, beneath all the fear, something colder began to stir. If I survived this basement, I wouldn't just escape. I would end him. Forever. Time inside the basement moved differently. Slow, heavy as if the darkness had weight. My ankle had swollen so much the skin looked stretched and bruised, throbbing with every heartbeat. I tried to stay awake, but the cold gnawed at my bones until my eyelids drifted shut. I don't know how long I was out. Minutes. Hours. The sound that woke me was the upstairs door slamming so hard dust fell from the ceiling. Heavy footsteps pounded across the floor above me. Mom's voice rose, broken, shaking like someone begging for mercy that would not come. Then a scream. Mine. Not hers. Mine without meaning to because I knew what he was about to do. The basement lock rattled. Metal scraped metal. Then the door swung open. Gregory filled the doorway, chest heaving, face flushed with a rage that had fermented into something monstrous. He stepped inside slowly, the way a man might step into a cage containing an animal he intended to break. Behind him, Mom scrambled in after him, tears streaking her face. Don't touch her. Please, Gregory, she's just a child. He backhanded her so hard she hit the concrete wall with a crack that echoed through the basement. She slid down, dazed. I screamed, Mom. She lifted her head weakly. Lydia, run! There was nowhere to run. Gregory grabbed a fistful of my hair and dragged me into the center of the basement floor. Pain ripped through my scalp. I clawed at his wrist, but he lifted me like I weighed nothing. He was strong in the way violent men become strong through practice. You think you can call the cops on me? He shouted, shaking me so hard my teeth rattled. You think you can embarrass me in my own house? He threw me down like trash. My injured ankle slammed against the hard concrete. A scream tore from my throat. He crouched in front of me, breathing hard. I take care of this family. I pay for everything, and you want to make me look weak? He grabbed my chin tightly, forcing my face up toward his. You think you're clever calling the police? You're not clever, Lydia. You're stupid. I spat blood onto the concrete. And you're a coward. His eyes went black. He stood, grabbed my leg, and stomped on it. The sound... God! The sound was worse than the pain. A sharp, sickening crack that shattered the world around me. My vision exploded into stars. My scream didn't even sound human. Mom crawled across the floor, dragging herself toward me, sobbing. Stop, please, Gregory. She's your daughter. He turned and kicked her in the ribs so hard she rolled onto her side, coughing. "Not my daughter," he snarled. "She's dead weight. And you?" His boot pressed on my broken leg will learn to obey. I clawed at the floor at my clothes, at anything I could grab just to pull myself away from him. But he followed, pressed harder. My vision blurred so violently the basement twisted and swayed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I could only feel. Pain so consuming it silenced everything else. He stepped back only when he grew tired of listening to me scream. Mom dragged herself to my side and shielded my body with hers, shaking so hard she could barely speak. "Gregory, please, please, she's hurt. She needs a hospital." He wiped his face with the back of his hand, eyes cold as stone. "She stays here. She caused this mess. She can stay here and think about what she's done." Then he walked out and locked the door. The moment he disappeared, Mom gathered my head into her lap, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She stroked my hair with shaking fingers, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," over and over like a prayer. My leg, my leg. I sobbed. I could feel the bone moving wrong inside my skin. She kissed my forehead through her tears. "Baby, listen to me. Listen, your phone. Where's your phone, Lydia?" I pointed with trembling fingers toward the corner where it had fallen earlier. Mom crawled across the concrete floor, her breath coming in pained gasps. She grabbed it and scrambled back to me. The screen was cracked, 1% battery. Mom's fingers shook as she unlocked it. She cupped my face. "Stay awake, baby. Stay with me. Tell me who to call." I met her eyes through the blur of tears and whispered the only name I knew would end this nightmare. "Call Grandma. Tell her Gregory Hale broke my leg. Tell her to leave no survivors in this house." Mom's eyes widened not with fear, with recognition, with understanding, with awakening. The phone rang, and with that call, Gregory Hale's fate was sealed. The phone rang only once before she picked up. My grandmother's voice cut through the basement darkness like a blade, sharp, calm, dangerous in a way that didn't need to be loud to be terrifying. "Helen, why are you calling me this late, and why do you sound like you're crying?" Mom choked on her own breath, trying to steady her voice, but it still trembled. I need help. It's Lydia. Something happened." There was a pause on the other end. A pause so still it felt like the entire basement held its breath. "Tell me exactly what happened." Every word was clipped deliberate. Mom looked at me, her hands shaking but her gaze steady. Gregory snapped. He hurt her." My leg throbbed so violently tears blurred my vision again. Mom lifted the phone closer to me. "Tell her, baby. Tell her yourself." My voice came out raw, broken, but filled with a quiet rage that burned through every ounce of fear. "Grandma!" Gregory broke my leg and he locked us in the basement. The silence that followed was icy, deadly. Then Grandma spoke each word, slow, cold enough to chill bone. He laid hands on my granddaughter. Not a question. A death sentence. "Grandma, wait," Mom began, but Grandma cut her off sharply. "Listen to me, Helen. Is he in the house right now?" Mom swallowed hard. "Why, yes. He's upstairs, drinking. He thinks we're trapped." Another beat of silence. Grandma's voice dropped even lower. "Then he won't see sunrise." My breath hitched. "Grandma," she exhaled a long, controlled breath. "You stay with Lydia. Do not move. Do not make noise. Do not try to protect that man. I'm on my way. And Helen, yes, I need the truth. Is this the first time he's hurt her?" Mom's shoulders collapsed. She bowed her head. She cried without making a sound. Grandma's voice hardened even further. "That's what I thought." Then the call ended. Mom held the phone loosely in her hand, staring at the dark screen as if it might bring her back into the real world. My grandmother wasn't just some sweet old lady who baked pies and went to Sunday church. She was Eleanor Creed, widowed young, built her own logistics company from nothing, and quietly, discreetly was connected to people who owed her favors. Powerful people. Dangerous people. People who handled situations. And tonight, she wasn't calling them. She was coming herself. Mom's breath shuddered as she cupped my face. "Lydia, what have I done? I let him." I touched her trembling hand with mine. "Mom, stop. This isn't your fault." She shook her head violently, tears dripping down her cheeks. "He told me I was overreacting. He told me I was dramatic. He told me I provoked him. He told me you were rebellious. He told me I misunderstood." Mom's hands tightened around mine. I believed him. I let him convince me that everything was fine. Every bruise, every lie, every time he isolated me. I let him do it, and you paid for it. He did this, not you. You didn't hit me. You didn't lock me down here. You didn't break me. He did. She let out a choked sob, pressing her forehead to mine. "I'm going to get you out of this basement, even if it kills me." My leg pulsed with unbearable pain. But hearing my mother finally speak like a woman who'd woken from a long nightmare gave me something pain couldn't smother. Hope. A faint rumble of an engine approached in the distance. Slow, controlled, purposeful. Mom's head jerked up. "Is that Grandma?" Mom whispered, her voice trembling, but not with fear this time, with something sharper. Determination and anger. Headlights flooded through the tiny basement window. A car door opened, then another. Footsteps, more than one pair. Heavy, coming closer. Mom held my hand tighter. "Baby, listen to me. When that door opens, everything changes." She was right, because the moment my grandmother stepped into that house, Gregory Hale's world would end, and mine would begin. The basement light flickered once, reacting to vibrations traveling through the floorboards above steady, heavy measured footsteps that did not belong to Gregory. These steps had authority, purpose, finality. Mom tightened her hold on my hand, her breath shallow as she listened. She knew the sound. I did too. Grandma didn't walk like a visitor. She walked like a verdict. A car door slammed outside, a second one this time. Then low murmurs, not panicked, not rushed, coordinated. That meant she didn't come alone. Of course she didn't. Eleanor Creed never entered a battlefield without her army. Mom crawled closer to the basement door, as quiet as a hunted animal, and pressed her ear to it. The footsteps in the living room stopped. A long, controlled silence followed. Then came Grandma's voice, calm, firm, deadly in its precision. "Gregory, open the door." She didn't shout. She didn't plead. She simply stated the instruction like she expected compliance, because she always got it. Gregory's chair scraped violently across the wooden floor, followed by staggering footsteps. He'd been drinking heavily. When he spoke, his voice was slurred with arrogance. "Eleanor, what the hell are you doing here?" Grandma sighed, the kind of sigh women give after decades of watching men disappoint them. "I came to collect my daughter and granddaughter." "Where are they?" Gregory laughed, a strange bark of disbelief. "Your daughter? He scoffed. "That girl is downstairs. She's hysterical. Eleanor, you should see what she did tonight. She attacked Serena. I had to restrain her." "Restrain?" The word crawled under my skin like something rotten. Grandma did not respond immediately. The silence stretched so taut it buzzed. Then her voice returned softer, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "You broke her leg." Gregory froze. The air itself froze with him. His reply cracked around the edges. "What? What are you talking about?" Grandma's heels clicked across the floor. Even her footsteps felt like a threat. "You put your hands on my granddaughter. You put your fists on her. You locked them both in a basement. And now you're going to open that door." He let out a shaky laugh. "Oh, come on. Did Helen call you crying, Eleanor? She's dramatic. She always has been." The room went silent. Then Grandma said a single word, a quiet command dropped like a blade. "Move!" Mom turned away from the door, her eyes wide. "She's not alone, Lydia. There's more than one person upstairs." I swallowed hard, despite the pulsing pain in my leg. who before she could answer something heavy hit the floor upstairs. A thud, a grunt, a choked sound, then a different voice, a man calm-controlled. "Don't get up, Mr. Hale." Mom and I looked at each other. "Grandma brought people. She really brought people." Gregory's voice rose in panic for the first time. "Eleanor, what are you doing? Eleanor, stop!" A smack cracked through the air. Not a punch, a slap, delivered with precision and purpose. Grandma's voice followed. "That's for the bruise on Helen's face." Another slap. "That's for the bruise on her ribs." Another. That one was for Lydia's leg. Footsteps approached the basement door. Mom scrambled back to me, holding my hand, her breath shaking. The lock clicked. Once. Twice. Slowly. Then the steel door opened, and there she stood, Eleanor Creed, my grandmother. Her silver hair blown by the winter wind, her coat draped over her shoulders like armor, her expression carved from stone. Behind her stood two large men dressed in black, men she trusted, men who owed her favors, men who did not look at me with pity, but with solemn acknowledgement. Grandma stepped inside the basement and knelt beside me, her eyes sweeping over my swollen leg, her jaw tightening with every detail she absorbed. "My sweet girl," she whispered. Her voice trembled for the first time. "He really did this to you." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. She cupped my face gently, then her voice hardened to steel. "And I told him what happens to men who touch my family." Behind her, the two men moved. One lifted Mom gently, helping her to her feet. The other slid his arms beneath me, preparing to carry me out. As he did, Grandma stood and turned toward the stairs, her expression shifting into something merciless. "Helen, take Lydia outside. The ambulance is on its way." "And you," Mom whispered. Grandma stared up the stairs. "I'm going to finish a conversation with Mr. Hale. Tonight we settle every debt he ever created. For you, for Lydia, for every bruise he thought he could hide." She touched my cheek one more time, her voice soft but vibrating with controlled fury. "And I promise you this, sweetheart, he will never hurt anyone again." Then she turned and walked up the stairs without looking back. And for the first time that night, I felt safe. Because the most dangerous person in the Hale mansion was finally on our side. The moment Grandma disappeared up the stairs, the basement seemed to exhale, as if even the concrete understood that the balance of power in the house had shifted. The man carrying me adjusted his grip carefully, his arms steady and professional. He wasn't a paramedic. He was the kind of man who could lift a grown adult without strain, the kind of man who followed orders from Eleanor Creed without hesitation. Mom limped beside us, her hand clutching mine as we ascended the basement steps slowly. Every movement sent a fresh wave of agony through my fractured leg, but it no longer felt like drowning. It felt like surviving. The living room came into view, and the scene was surreal. Gregory was on his knees on the hardwood floor, his hair disheveled, his lip bleeding, his arrogance stripped away. One of Grandma's men stood behind him, pressing a firm hand on his shoulder, keeping him down without effort. Grandma paced in front of him slowly like a prosecutor preparing a closing argument, her heels clicking with cold precision. When she saw me being carried in, she turned her head just slightly, her gaze softening for a heartbeat. Then her expression shifted back into that icy, lethal calm. "Good. Bring her here." The man carrying me lowered me onto the couch carefully as Mom knelt beside me, whispering reassurances into my hair. Grandma stepped closer to Gregory, her hands clasped behind her back. "Let's clear the air, shall we?" Gregory chuckled breathlessly, still clinging to a shred of defiance. "Eleanor, listen, your daughter has issues. She manipulates you." Grandma raised a hand. "Stop talking." He froze mid-breath. She continued. "Let me explain to you exactly how this night will go. First, you will tell the truth. Second, you will accept the consequences. Third, you will pray that those consequences remain legal." His Adam's apple bobbed. "Eleanor, this is insane. You laid hands on my granddaughter. You broke her leg. You locked them in a basement." Gregory opened his mouth to argue, but Grandma snapped her fingers once. The man behind him tightened his grip. Gregory winced. "Good," she said mildly. Now, let's begin with the lies you've told Helen. Mom stiffened. Grandma turned toward her gently. Sweetheart, I need you to listen. Then she faced Gregory again. You told her Lydia was rebellious, difficult, that she provoked you, that she distorted things. But the bruises on Helen's arms didn't come from rebellion, did they? The room went silent. Gregory's eyes darted around, searching for escape. Grandma leaned down, lowering her voice. In fact, those bruises started long before Lydia even came home, didn't they? Mom's breath hitched. Her hand flew to her mouth. Gregory's face whitened. Grandma straightened, smoothing her coat. You see, Helen, I suspected years ago something was wrong. But every time I visited you, insisted you were fine. He insisted he was good to you. And then you stopped visiting. You stopped calling. You withdrew from your friends. Classic signs. Mom's entire body shook as if her bones were remembering something she'd tried desperately to forget. Grandma pulled a stack of folded papers from her coat. I brought these tonight in case my suspicions were correct. She handed them to one of her men, who placed them on the coffee table beside me. Medical reports, photos, injury timelines, copies of emails from the event firm where Serena Vale forwarded personal conversations, financial audits showing money missing from Mom's inheritance account, and worse, records of threats Gregory sent to vendors when they questioned him. Grandma looked down at him, her voice razor sharp. You didn't cover your tracks well. For someone who thinks he's intelligent, you're remarkably sloppy. Gregory's face flushed with panic. This is illegal. You can't go through my... Grandma cut him off again. No. What's illegal is battery fraud, coercion, financial abuse, and what appears to be a 20-year pattern of predatory behavior. He shook his head, sweating. That's not true. That's... Eleanor paused. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a small recorder. She clicked play. Gregory's voice filled the room. You want to end up like the last girl who crossed me. My blood ran cold. Mom gasped tearfully, stumbling back. Grandma tilted her head. Last girl. Who was she? Gregory's mouth fell open. He had no answer, but the truth hung there, heavy, dark, undeniable. And for the first time, he realized he wasn't the predator anymore. He was prey, and Eleanor Creed had come to collect every lie he'd ever told. Gregory froze his breath, shallow, his pupils shrinking like a man cornered for the first time in his life. The recording kept playing, his own voice dripping with menace, echoing through the Hale mansion like a ghost dragging its chains across the floor. When it ended, Grandma clicked the recorder off with a calmness that terrified everyone standing in the room. Except me. I felt something inside my chest loosen a knot I had carried for months, finally beginning to unravel. Grandma stepped closer to him. Her shadow fell over his hunched form. Speak. Her voice was so soft it felt colder than shouting. Tell us who the last girl was. Gregory swallowed hard. His lips parted. A stammer escaped. It was just a girl who... Grandma motioned subtly with her hand. The man behind Gregory tightened his grip again, forcing his shoulders down. The pressure made Gregory wince. Try again, she said, this time with the truth. His eyes darted between all of us. Mom's trembling form, my broken body on the couch, the two men who flanked the room like statues, and finally Grandma, who stared at him as if she had already written his obituary. He cracked. She worked for me. Years ago, she threatened to report me for harassment. His voice cracked like old glass. And Grandma pressed. I scared her off. She quit. That's all. Grandma laughed softly. A terrifying sound. Oh, Gregory. She didn't quit. She disappeared. His head snapped up. What? She stepped closer. You should have been more careful about the words you use. Men like you always reveal yourselves. She nodded to the man near the door. He picked up a thin folder and handed it to her. She dropped it onto Gregory's knees. Slowly he opened it. Photos, emails, statements, witness accounts, a missing person report, and worst, a picture of him with the girl. Weeks before she vanished. Gregory's breath came in short, panicked bursts. This is fake. Is all of it fake? Grandma leaned in her voice nearly a whisper. Say it again. He swallowed the words. Or rather, they swallowed him, because the truth had finally surfaced, and it was lethal. Mom covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she stared at Gregory as if seeing a monster unmasked. Lydia, she whispered. He could have. I took her hand. Mom, he already did. The room felt colder now, not because of fear, because of exposure. Gregory tried to stand, but the man behind him pushed him back to his knees. Let me go, Eleanor, please. You should have asked for mercy before you broke her leg, Grandma said quietly. Not after. He looked up at her desperate. What do you want? Money, a confession. I'll give you anything. Anything, Eleanor repeated. She crouched down slowly until their eyes were level. Then confess. If you lay one hand on either of them ever again, if you took money, if you hit Helen, if you hurt Lydia, say it. Out loud. His jaw clenched. He looked at Mom, then at me, and he broke. I hit her. I took some of her inheritance. I cheated. I lied. His voice wavered. And Lydia, I went too far. Mom sobbed into her hands. I shut my eyes for a moment, letting the confession wash over me, not as comfort, but as confirmation. He did it. He said it, and there was no taking it back. Gregory suddenly lifted his head. But none of you can prove anything in court. You think you can ruin me, I'm smarter than you think. Grandma straightened. That's what men like you always say, seconds before their world collapses. She nodded to the man near the front door. He pulled out a phone hit speaker and set it on the coffee table. A woman's voice came through. This is Agent Morales with the FBI. We received the file Mrs. Creed forwarded earlier tonight. We're en route with a warrant. Gregory's face drained of color. FBI. For what? Grandma folded her arms. Financial fraud, tax evasion, coercion, blackmail, witness tampering, possible involvement in a disappearance. You left a trail of crimes like breadcrumbs. Gregory shook his head violently. No, Eleanor, you don't understand what you're doing. Eleanor stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a low, controlled murmur that silenced the room. Oh, I understand perfectly. I'm ending you. And as the distant sound of sirens began to rise in the cold night air, Gregory Hale finally realized. His kingdom had fallen, his lies had collapsed, and his freedom was seconds away from disappearing forever. The sirens grew louder, sharp, slicing through the night until red and blue lights bled through the windows of the Hale mansion, washing the living room in the colors of retribution. Gregory twisted on the floor like a trapped animal looking toward every exit, every hallway, every window, as if his gaze alone could create an escape route. But there was none. Not anymore. Grandma stepped back, giving the room a clear path. Let him face it, she murmured. Let the law take what's left of him. A hard knock rattled the front door. FBI, open up. The agent's voice rang with authority. One of Grandma's men opened it. 2 agents entered first, Agent Morales and a taller man in a dark jacket, both carrying an air of practiced calm. Behind them came local police officers. They took one look at Gregory, disheveled, bruised, panicked, and their expressions hardened. Agent Morales approached him. Gregory Hale, you are under arrest for multiple counts including financial fraud, aggravated battery coercion, and obstruction of justice. Please stand. Gregory lunged. Not at the agents. At me. At my broken leg. Mom screamed my name. Grandma shouted, "Move!" But he didn't make it 2 steps. One of the agents tackled him, pinning him to the hardwood with a thundering crash. Gregory howled as his arm was twisted behind his back. His cheek pressed into the floor. You don't understand, he screamed. She attacked me. They're all lying. Agent Morales didn't flinch. Sir, remain still. You're only making this harder for yourself. Click. The sound of handcuffs locking around his wrists echoed like a final nail sealing a coffin. Gregory thrashed once more, but it was futile. The moment his wrists clicked together, something inside me eased for the first time in years, like a door unlocking inside my chest. They forced him to his feet. He looked at me, eyes wild, face red, breath shaking, and for the first time I saw something in him I had never seen before. Fear, not dominance, not fury. Fear. Lydia, he shouted, voice cracking. Tell them, I didn't mean to tell them, you misunderstood. Grandma stepped between us like a wall of steel. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't touch him. She simply said, "She is never speaking to you again, and neither am I." Gregory's mouth opened, then closed. The agents dragged him toward the front door. As they passed the hallway mirror, he caught a glimpse of himself, sweaty, disheveled, weak. A king who had lost his kingdom. A predator finally caged. Outside, neighbors gathered in clusters watching the spectacle unfold. Phones recorded, voices murmured. Gregory tried to hide his face, but there was nowhere to hide. His empire built on fear was collapsing under the weight of truth. The agents shoved him into the squad car. The door slammed. For a moment, the world went still. Mom collapsed beside me on the couch, clutching my hand, her shoulders shaking with sobs of relief, exhaustion, release. "He's gone," she whispered, almost disbelieving. "He's actually gone." Grandma knelt on my other side, brushing my hair off my forehead with trembling hands. "You're safe now, sweetheart. He will never touch you again." I closed my eyes and let her words sink into my bones. Safe. It felt foreign, unfamiliar, beautiful. The paramedics arrived moments later. They moved around me quickly, checking my vitals, stabilizing my leg, preparing the stretcher. One of them glanced at Mom. Did he do this to her? Mom nodded, tears falling freely. The medic's jaw tightened. "We'll take care of her. Of both of you." As they lifted me, pain shot through my leg again, but this time I didn't feel helpless. I felt healed. Not physically, not yet, but in a way that mattered more. Gregory Hale was gone. His hands would never bruise my skin. His voice would never poison our home. His shadow would never darken another room. As the stretcher rolled toward the door, I looked back at Grandma. She stood tall in the center of the living room, the battlefield where she had reclaimed her family. Her face softened by lamplight, but sharpened by resolve. Eleanor Creed had walked into hell to pull us out, and hell had learned to fear her. Tonight was the reckoning, and justice had teeth. The hospital room was painted in soft creams and muted blues colors meant to soothe the mind and trick the heart into believing the world outside was gentle. Mom sat beside my bed, her hands wrapped around mine, as if she feared I might disappear if she loosened her grip. My leg was immobilized, wrapped in layers of plaster and padding, suspended slightly to reduce swelling. The doctors said surgery would be needed. Pins, plates, months of physical therapy. But I didn't care. Not anymore. Because every time I opened my eyes, I wasn't waking up to a basement. I wasn't waking up to Gregory's footsteps. I wasn't waking up wondering if today was the day the monster in the house decided to punish someone. Instead, I woke to sunlight through the blinds and the soft, steady sound of my mother breathing beside me. On the second day, Grandma walked in holding a cup of coffee and a folder tucked under her arm. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally, as if she'd burned through decades of fury and now stood on the other side of it steady but scarred. "Morning, sweetheart," she murmured, kissing my forehead. "How's the pain manageable?" I said. "They gave me meds." She nodded briskly. "Good, because we have things to discuss." Mom straightened nervously. Grandma set the folder on the bed and opened it. "These are the documents for the restraining order. Already filed. He will not be able to come within 500 feet of either of you ever again." Mom exhaled, her shoulders sagging with relief. "And these," Grandma pulled another set of papers out, "are the financial disclosures he hid. Enough evidence of embezzlement and theft to lock him away for a very long time." Mom's breath trembled. "Eleanor, how did you?" Grandma raised a hand. "Sweetheart, I've been a businesswoman for over 50 years. Men like Gregory are loud. They leave footprints, and they underestimate quiet women." She glanced at me with a faint smirk. "We're going to make sure his trial is airtight. He won't wiggle out of this on technicalities. Some predators get away with things. Gregory won't." Days passed, then weeks. Gregory was denied bail. His crimes were too extensive. The FBI traced money he funneled overseas threats sent to former employees and tampered invoices. Serena Vale was subpoenaed. She flipped instantly, crying, shaking, confessing everything once she realized Gregory wasn't the powerful protector she believed he was, but a sinking ship dragging anyone near him into the ocean. The night the news aired the footage of Gregory in handcuffs crying and screaming as agents walked him into the federal courthouse, Mom and I watched from the couch in Grandma's house wrapped in blankets. Mom rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "It's over." I didn't cry. I thought I would. But instead, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. Not revenge, not victory, just peace. A few months later after my surgery and during recovery, Grandma approached me while I was practicing with my crutches on the back porch. "There's something I want to talk to you about," she said. I nodded. She pointed to the small renovated building behind her house. "That's going to be the Lydia Creed Center, for women and girls leaving violent homes." I stared at her, stunned. "You're opening a shelter." Grandma shook her head. "Not just a shelter, a resource center. Legal help therapy, emergency housing, financial planning, job connections." Mom stepped up beside her, eyes shining. "And you're going to help run it." "Me?" My voice cracked. "Why, me?" Grandma held my gaze. "Because you survived something monstrous and you didn't let it hollow you out. You're strong. And strong women help others rise." I swallowed thickly, emotions swirling too fast to name. I looked at Mom. She nodded through tears. "I want this too," she whispered. "We can build something together. Healing wasn't instant. Trauma doesn't vanish." But slowly, piece by piece, we rebuilt our lives, not around fear or bruises or silence, but around something new, something earned, something powerful. Safety, community, strength. On the day Gregory Hale was sentenced 30 years without parole, we stood outside the courthouse together, Mom on my right, Grandma on my left. The wind was cold, but I didn't shiver, not anymore, because I finally understood something Gregory never did. Families built on fear will always crumble. Families built on truth endure. And we 3 generations of women who refused to stay broken were finally free.